innovation and foster innovation.
Now, in our ongoing series on Nigeria's economic outlook for next year, that is 2017, Good Morning Nigeria again today focuses on trade and manufacturing subsectors. Now, what are the key policy or regulatory instruments that are targeted at revamping the nation's ailing manufacturing sector? This, and of course other questions, we shall try to provide answers to in the course of the program. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And my name is Blessing Abu. I join Kingsley to welcome you to today's edition of the program, coming to you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA. It's Africa's largest television network. And in the course of the program, definitely will bring to you our companion segments, which include the newspaper review, business reports, sports, foreign tidbit, as well as entertainment news. But right now, we're kicking off with the morning news, and here is Anne Jibuna as our guide. Good morning to you, Anne.
Yeah, good morning, Blessing, and good morning, Kingsley. Good morning. Here's the news. Newly appointed career ambassadors designate have been asked to do what is necessary towards ensuring that Nigeria's improved image is well recognized and appreciated by the international community for enhanced mutually beneficial relations. President Muhammadu Buhari gave the task at the opening of an induction course for the appointees. He said Nigeria is much more than the negative image portrayed abroad. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the president gave the assurance that the present economic recession will come to an end next year.
But as Nigerian ambassadors, you must set the standard of putting Nigeria first in all your actions. You must show leadership, fairness, and justice to all. Discipline, probity, accountability, and zero tolerance for corruption must be your watchwords. You are expected to project the best image and traditions of our country in your conduct and all you do.
In another development, President Muhammadu Buhari says his administration is being effectively guided by international best practice and standards in the rehabilitation of the enormous internally displaced persons generated by the Boko Haram insurgency. He stated this while granting audience to the visiting United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, who called on him.
Let me say categorically that the Senate did not reject Ibrahim Magu as the chairman. What happened was that when we slated his confirmation for Thursday, then we had an issue or a letter from the Department of State Security that could not allow us to continue with the confirmation without further clarification. I want that to come out very clearly.
Meanwhile, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has assured Nigerian youths of continued government support in realizing their ambition for good citizenship. It was while receiving the 2016 winners of the Protecting Education Advocacy Challenge held in the IDP camp in the Northeast.
What plan are there for us to pursue our desired goals in education in a safe and accessible environment?
But we are going to make sure that we keep working with you all, and that we keep you in our thoughts all the time, so that you can achieve all that you plan to achieve.
With special attention on roads, railways, power and ICT, as well as agriculture, Nigeria's 2017 budget estimate of 7.3 trillion naira promises to reposition the economy on the path of recovery and growth to the benefit of all Nigerians. Minister of Budget and National Planning, Udoma, stated this during the presentation of the 2017 budget breakdown, which attracted other ministers at the banquet hall of the State House, Abuja.
Infrastructure, agriculture, solid minerals. To create employment, you create growth for the economy.
The National Assembly will consider the budget timeously, and this is evident in the fact that, as the President admitted and the National and the Senate admitted, there was consultation at the preparation stage and input were made by the National Assembly.
Still on economic matters, the geometric growth in the non-oil sector in the country has been attributed to the deliberate efforts by the present administration to fully diversify the nation's economy. Minister of Mines and Steel Development Kayode Fayemi said this during the inauguration of a 26-man mining implementation strategic team in Abuja.
Key low-cost, low-hurdle actions to be implemented by the ministry, industry stakeholders, and other critical players that can start to build a mining revival and create a positive narrative to drive increased investment.
In the meantime, the House of Representatives says the presentation of the 2016 budget by President Muhammadu Buhari will not interrupt the implementation of the 2016 budget scheduled to terminate on the 5th of May 2017. House Leader Femi Gbajabiamila stated this while briefing National Assembly correspondents on major activities of the House in 2016.
The House of Representatives will not allow Nigerians suffer from any haphazard implementation of the 2016 budget.
And Germany is to provide 3 million euros for the procurement of surveillance equipment and mobile medical unit for the Nigerian military. The Minister of Defense, Mansour Dan Ali, announced this while receiving some military facilities donated by the German government. Germany's Minister of Defense, Ursula von der Leyen, presented the facilities.
Provided 3 million euro for procurement of additional surveillance equipment. We are also receiving 3 mobile tactical ground surveillance radar systems for border security in the northeast.
The medical unit that we have donated to Nigeria is accompanied by training the trainers for servicing this medical unit.
And still on the military, the Nigerian Air Force has established a cancer screening center at the Kaduna Air Force Base as part of welfare of its personnel. The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, who was represented at the inauguration ceremony, says the center is open to the public.
When a man is in the war front and he hears that his family is sick and he doesn't know exactly what is wrong, it impinges on his morale. So the Nigerian Air Force decided to set up this cancer screening center to make sure that that is not the problem. We isolate it and enhance the quality of the healthcare delivery that we provide.
Ahead of Thursday's official flag-off of the Abuja digital switchover, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, has expressed satisfaction with the level of preparedness so far. This was the outcome of his visit to some facilities put in place to that effect.
The commitment and the passion of Pinnacle to this project, and we have come here to ensure that no stone is left unturned.
In the meantime, the Records Officers Registration Board of Nigeria has visited the Nigerian Television Authority to solicit support in sensitizing the public on the importance of effective data management, especially in this digital age.
We need to generate our own data, which has to be authentic and credible. And the only way to do that is to aggregate the data from the necessary sources.
One of the challenges we have is how to get a data that will be used for international comparison when it comes to Nigerian head status.
The 2017 National Political Summit has been unveiled, with conveners strongly advising politicians to bring an end to the do-or-die tendencies rearing their ugly heads in Nigerian politics.
Any life lost, if you lose one life during and after any election, it makes nonsense of that election.
This time around, we create this platform. When they come together, they remember the old times. And then that temporary ceasefire may lead to permanent ceasefire.
Well, that's the news for now. Blessing and Kingsley will be back after this break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Would you like some water? It's cold, especially for you.
Which era are you living in? We have a fridge.
When everything else in your house is from the present, then why are your toilet cleaning methods from the past? Harpic, all-in-one for you. Compared to other toilet cleaners, Harpic removes top stains, kills all germs, and removes bad odors for a shining, clean, and fresh toilet.
Wow!
You should also take the Harpic
all-in-one challenge.
Nigeria joins the rest of the world in going digital. This means Nigeria is moving from analog terrestrial TV broadcasting to digital. Now, digital broadcasting gives you clearer pictures, crystal clear sound, and a chance for more channels and more shows to watch. Digital TV is a whole new experience for you and a rich harvest of digital development for the nation. Come aboard, Nigeria going digital.
Coming to Abuja soon.
If you just joined us, the program is Good Morning Nigeria, and it's time now for our business reports, where we have that Nigeria records a low trade balance in the third quarter of 2016. And in France, a court convicts IMF's Christine Lagarde. All the details we'll find out from Leah Katung-Babatunde right away.
The total value of Nigeria's external trade in the third quarter of 2016 was 4.721 trillion naira. This figure consisted of exports worth 2.309 trillion naira and imports worth 2.413 trillion naira, indicating a slight negative trade balance of 104 billion. These figures were contained in the latest figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS. As in previous quarters, the sector which contributed the most to total trade was crude oil, and the manufacturing sector had the second largest share of total trade. Nigeria imported the most goods in the third quarter of the year from China. Belgium and the Netherlands were the next most important partners. They were followed by the USA, India, and France. Highlights of the third quarter external trade imports indicate that imported agricultural products rose by 33%, raw materials imports grew 60%, imported solid minerals grew 68.5%, and other oil products grew 43.3%. The value of exported agricultural products rose by 5.3%. Imported raw materials was 32.05%. Solid minerals exports grew 220.96%. The value of manufactured product exports were 21.86% more. Crude oil exports rose 30.86% in Q3, while other oil products was 20.09%. The Consumer Protection Council, CPC, has disclosed that it has ordered redress up to the tune of 2.5 billion naira for consumers in 2016 as refunds and compensation in the resolution of their complaints on unsatisfactory services and products. This was made known in Lagos during the public presentation of the agency's 2016 annual report by the Director General of CPC, Mrs. Dupe Atoki. The Director General disclosed that the amount included foreign currencies of $31,948 and 1,406 euros recovered for aggrieved consumers who complained to the Council.
Once consumers know their right, trust Nigerians, they will go for it. And we need also to get the businesses to begin to respect and regard consumers as the reason that they are in business.
She stated further that out of the 5,000 total number of complaints received in various sectors, 4,000 were resolved, while electricity and power and chemicals and allied product sectors had highest and least number of complaints. The Director General attributed the positive strides made by the Council, particularly in the year 2016, to the adoption of sectoral intervention and other initiatives. She said due to the huge consumer abuse in virtually all sectors of the economy, the Council, in developing its 2013 to 2017 strategic plan, identified a tripod stand for a fast-track delivery of its mandate via sectoral intervention, enhanced consumer awareness, and collaborations with other sector regulations. Now, next is a graphic summary of closing figures from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And lastly, the International Monetary Fund IMF's managing director, Christine Lagarde, was convicted Monday of negligence by a special French court for her role in a contentious and generous arbitration award in 2008 to a politically connected tycoon. But Lagarde, who was France's finance minister at the time, was spared jail time and a criminal record. She had risked a year of imprisonment and a fine. The guilty verdict, even without punishment, tarnishes Lagarde's impressive career as one of the most powerful women in world finance. The Washington-based IMF said after Monday's verdict that its executive board will meet soon to consider the most recent developments. The case revolves around a €403 million arbitration deal given to tycoon Bernard Tapie in 2008 over the botched sale of sportswear makers Adidas in the 1990s. Now that's business news for this hour. Thank you for watching.
All right, thank you very much there, Leah, for the business package. Next for us now is a review of the headlines in some of today's newspapers.
We'd like to welcome Bayo Toyebi into the studio again this morning to do the review with us. Good morning to you, Bayo.
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay.
Bayo, pleasure to have you again on the program. Let's begin our review this morning by going over to the Nigerian Pilot newspaper. The Nigerian Pilot has as its lead story, federal government to fund 2017 budget with 250 billion naira recovered loot. It has a rider, Buhari, recession to end next year. Details of the story can be found on page 4. And then further down on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot itself, just below the photograph that you see the Minister and Minister of State at the breakdown yesterday. New tax regime, truck drivers lock down Abuja, Lokoja Road. That's on page 5 in greater detail. And then you have, of course, a window of other headlines. Stop using ethnicity and religion to divide Nigeria. That's according to the Sultan. And Obaseki, Edo governor, presents 150 billion naira budget of consolidation and prosperity. Yuletide, NNPC assures enough products, and you can see the details of the importation of petroleum products, both PMS as well as Jet A1 fuel, that's for aviation. Now, one fuel dead as market collapses in Akwa Ibom. And IMF boss Lagarde convicted in France over negligence. Those are the headlines we're taking in the meantime from the Nigerian Pilot. Person?
All right, so still relating the issue of the moment, which is the 2017 budget. Start off with that as captured by New Telegraph. Just above the masthead, we have federal government to fund 2017 budget with 259.6 billion naira Abacha loot. You'll find that story starting right there, but continues on page 2. And the boldest headline for the New Telegraph, of course, Buhari to Saraki, let's work together. With rider, president recession will end in 2017. You find details of that story on page 4. Quickly now to the Daily Trust. I have still on the budget, but this time around the 2016 focus is what is the focus with the Daily Trust. Federal government 2016 revenue projections failed. Well, why it's failed, you find all the details right there on the front page, but continues on page 5. But then there is a breakdown, at least in graphic representation, just on the front page there. Just below that, you have federal government to shut Abuja airport for 6 weeks. That's what you find on page 3. But in details, of course, that will be between February and March 2017. Let's let Bayo come in at this point before we take on.
Yes, let's start with the stories about the budget. Already, the president has indicated that Nigeria will be out of the recession in 2017. You may recall that when you have 2 successive negative returns quarterly, we will go into recession. What that means is that by the next quarter, we possibly are going to have a positive economic indices return, and that will pull us out of recession. But the other lamentation is that budget 2016 did not meet expectation. You may be recalled that 6.06 trillion was what was budgeted. The revenue projection was 2.8 trillion, but what was attained was 2.2 trillion. In the area of exchange rate, what was projected or expected was 197 naira to a dollar. What obtained is, as at recently, was about 305 naira. Even for oil production, the projection was 2.2 million barrels a day, and we are aware that vandalization brought that far down, little over 1.2, sometimes 1.6, fluctuating million barrels in a day. But be that as it may, there are indications that the Sultan of Sokoto and Reverend Ejike Mbaka at Enugu have preached religious tolerance to all Nigerians. The Sultan and the Reverend were at Enugu at the reception by the state government for Enugu Rangers for their feat in winning the Premier League. And here what the Sultan says, he says, Islam does not permit anyone to kill in the name of religion. Anyone who purports to kill in the name of religion should be held a criminal and treated as such. He said, Father Mbaka on his own side said, the Sultan's pronouncement has changed the minds of many Nigerians about religious differences. We were blaming each other unnecessarily. We were fighting unnecessarily. Sultan has come to build a bridge. He said, the Sultan, you are coming here, has succeeded in clarifying all our long suspicions. There is a developing story relating to the confirmation of the acting chairman of the EFCC. Yes. Daily Trust report that there were 2 versions of the security report.
Yes, just below the masthead for the Daily Trust. Said 2 versions of DSS reports on Magu exist in Senate. You find that story on page 3.
Yes. So it's a 1 report was signed, and the 2 reports were purportedly signed by the same officer on behalf of the Director General of the Department of State. One was addressed to the clerk of the Senate. The other was addressed to Senator Enang, who is the special advisor to the President on National Assembly matters. While the one addressed to the clerk said he was a liability to anti-corruption, the other addressed to Senator Enang said he is highly recommended and can be considered for the job. The senator also threw some light. He says, he told Daily Trust that the executive session Thursday read and discussed the one that was addressed to the clerk. He says, we cannot act on that report. It is only for information and not for action. He said, normally, the Senate only reads letters from the president on this floor. No other letters are supposed to be read. He says, for now, the Senate does not approve or reject nominees even in the executive session. So to have done that was in itself an aberration. Meanwhile, the Senate leader, Ali Ndume, has clarified that the acting chairman of EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, has not been rejected. He said that the Senate said it cannot proceed with his screening based on the DSS report. Therefore, the Senate is waiting for that clarification from Mr. President.
Well, that story you just talked about now is actually on the front page of the blueprint. It's the lead story. The blueprint leads with a double-decker headline, indicating what the confusion is. It says Senate divided over. Sorry, that's another one actually. Senate divided over SGF's indictment, and then the rider to it says it never rejected Magu, and SSS submitted conflicting reports. You can see that's the lead story as well as the rider there indicating what is happening. And details of the story, of course, can be found at the inside page. I think that's on page 6. And then if you go further down on the front page of the blueprint, there are other headlines there. I'd say 288 billion naira stolen funds, part of 2017 budget. You've already discussed that. And Rivers will not participate in phony police probe. That's according to Wike, governor of Rivers. And crisis, Taraba death toll hits 31, and curfew in Kafancha. That's and then it says Saraki, influential politician of our time. That's Buhari's congratulatory message to him. And Dogara hails Supreme Court's judgment on council chairman sack. That's an inside page story. Boko Haram, that's the kicker. Pupils donate 2.5 million naira sanitary kits to soldiers. Again, that's an inside page story. But Blessing, just
before you let by your coming, Kingsley, still talking about stories of rejection. You have beside the DSS stories on Magu, workers reject INA as Auditor General of the Federation. This story you find on page 7. So let me just add that to the story on rejection.
Why do we appear to have frequent reports of varying versions of documents before the National Assembly? If you recall, there was the PIB. They said there were several versions of it, yes. And then of course, as recently as this year, you had how many versions of the 2016 appropriation bill, yes. And a security report from the DSS. What is the proper channel of communication? If you want to communicate to the, communication to the National Assembly, who is the proper officer to receive it? That's the point.
I think that's a challenge for the management of the National Assembly. But talking about the judiciary now, the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria has identified causes of delayed justice at the appeal courts. He says appointing more judges won't solve the problem, neither will increasing the number of courtrooms be the solution. Justice Onoge said the Supreme Court will remain congested so long as the number of appeals proceeding from the high courts were not regulated. And therefore, the acting Chief Justice has said that the Supreme Court that currently has 17 justices and for which the Constitution provides 21, he has opined that even the 17 is enough. He cites as, for instance, the United States, which has a larger population and far, far larger than Nigeria, had only 9 Supreme Court justices. But until initiatives are made to ensure that not all cases get passed through the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, we are going to continue to have this.
Well, that's a point that guests have often discussed on this program. We've asked them the question. If you recall, the former Chief Justice at some point indicated that the Apex Court had some 5,000 to 6,000 matters to handle.
Yes.
And
he pointed out that it was one of the highest around the world.
Absolutely.
Second to India, it was.
Probably the highest. And you ask yourself, why you have this frequent traffic of cases right from the lowest court to the Supreme Court. Some of the appeals, with the greatest respect, are actually unnecessary.
Very unnecessary.
Matters already decided, by the Apex Court are again brought back to them on the basis of all kinds of applications. But as its acting Chief Justice has said, perhaps as part of the law reform, that there would need to be a cap on that.
All right, Kingsley, let's quickly take a look at what is being done with some children. While some are on the negative notes, there are some cheering news coming from the IDP camp in the Northeast. For the New Telegraph, there is a story. The picture there is that of a female pastor held for selling 68 children. You find that on page 8, the details, fuller details, on page 8. But then to the right-hand side of the paper, you have the Vice President, Yemi Oshibajo, with winners of 2016 pitch competition, and an initiative for IDPs in Northeast in Abuja yesterday. You'll see. Happy moments for the children.
You're talking about criminality. That woman of God is explaining to the police in Ogun State. That's why
woman of Satan, perhaps. God would not push you to do such things.
Yes, because he says she's a pastor. Criminality in Abuja is on the increase, and probably it is not uncommon because we are getting towards the unitary period. There were 3 instances in Abuja. An alleged thief who was said to have stolen a motorcycle was tied to a pole in Kuje. They were almost going to mob him. but the police came in and saved him. A driver too, on the convoy of an Adamawa traditional ruler, unfortunately lost control and hit 2 persons who were seriously injured. It happened at Gwarimpa. They were almost going to set him ablaze before the police rescued him. The third one was an unfortunate man who flagged down an unpainted taxi after he had drawn money from the bank. He was heading towards Day. When they got to Karimo Forest, they pointed a pistol at him and took his 235,000 naira. Be very careful. One chance is back again on the street.
All right, Bayo, let's take this last headline from the Authority newspaper. The Authority newspaper, that's close to the foot of the front page of the Authority newspaper, below the photograph there, it says, Federal government begins new vehicle registration system in March. That will be March 2017. That vehicle owners will undergo a new registration system, and that according to the Minister of Finance, this is a VIN, Vehicle Identification Number, designed to reduce revenue leakages and imports under declaration and evasion of duty payments. Of course, these are matters that you can find in greater detail on the front page there with a jump to page 2 of the Authority newspaper.
Talking about vehicles, you recall yesterday that we said that the FRSC has said tankers should no longer drive at night. That has been put on hold for a while now.
Well, we hope that the recklessness often associated with some of the tanker drivers will also be on hold as well.
Yes.
Baya I'd like to thank you for being with us on the review segment today. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be another day. Thank you for having me.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the manufacturing sector as well as trade in terms of the economic outlook for 2017.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hello, dear. You've got the first signs of a sore throat.
Yes, and I'm afraid it could be signs of a sore throat.
Don't you worry. Just act immediately, but not with non-medicated throat sweets. Take an expert product. Take Strepsils. Look at what it does to sore throat germs compared to a throat sweet. Strepsils not only stops the germs from multiplying, it even kills them.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, sore throat. Stop a sore throat early. Take Strepsils. Wow, Fanta!
Wow, that great taste! The delicious bubbly Fanta! What could possibly get in our way? Drink your Fanta before someone else does. Enjoy the great tasting Fanta flavors!
The program is Good Morning Nigeria, and you're watching it live on the NTA. Well, for our background report to kickstart our conversation, taking a look at the manufacturing as well as trade policies as contained in 2017 budget, let's take a look at what the old Nigeria, which seems to have been a slow but surely disappearing act, has been reported. For this new era, we're rising in what we have as growth to actually eat and consume what we make. And of course, these are words of assurance from the President Muhammadu Buhari, during the presentation of the 2017 budget estimate, with promises to grow trade and the manufacturing sector of the economy. Let's find out how Timothy Yusuf is capturing this in this report to set the tone for discussion.
The 2017 appropriation plans to grow trade and the manufacturing sector, translating to buying made in Nigeria goods. President Muhammadu Buhari promises the administration's desire to, among others, encourage garment manufacturing and Nigerian designers, tailors and fashion retailers. He also announced plans to intervene in other areas, including patronizing local entrepreneurs through promotion of the manufacturing powerhouses in Aba, Calabar, Kaduna, Kano, Lagos, Newi, Onisha and Ota. The overall objective is to make Nigeria a new manufacturing hub. At present, the demand of the urban consumer has presented an opportunity for the rural producer, with farmers, traders and transporters seeing improvement in their fortunes. For instance, Nigerians who preferred imported products, according to Mr. President, are now consuming made in Nigeria products, citing examples from Argungu in Kebbi to Abakaliki in Ebonyi, where rice farmers and millers are taking over the rice market. He calls for the replication of such success in other staples like wheat, sugar, soya, tomato, and dairy products. Already, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the organized private sector, and a handful of Nigerian commercial banks have embarked on an ambitious private sector-led 600 billion naira program to push the nation towards self-sufficiency in these products in the next 3 years. Leveraging on the advantage of current opportunities to export processed agricultural products and manufactured goods, therefore brings the farmers, small and medium-sized manufacturers, agro-allied businesses, dressmakers, entertainers and technology startups to the status of true drivers of Nigeria's economic recovery.
All right, Timothy Yusuf, thank you very much there for that background report. Now, we are being joined in the Abuja studios by the Director General, Budget Office of the Federation, Mr. Ben Akabweze. Mr. Akabweze, a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to you.
All right. And then we also have joining us from our Lagos Network Center, the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a fairly familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Mr. Muda Yusuf. Mr. Yusuf, compliments of the season and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and compliments of the season to you.
All right, listen.
Yes, we have other guests joining us from other centers, and we'd like to welcome at this point from our Ibadan Network Center, a former president, Nigerian Economics Society, Professor Olu Ajakaye. Professor Ajakaye, it's good to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
And joining us via Skype from Kano is the Managing Director, Dangote Group Fund, Malam Abdul Karim Keita. Good morning and compliments of the season as well. Okay, I think I will try to sort out the connection with his audio. Let's start off right here in the studio in Abuja, where we have the Director General Budget Office of the Federation. Yes, the 2017 budget estimate, of course, in some quarters is exciting, with some hopes here and there, and for some, the kind of is the usual grandstanding. But really, why are these critical areas, manufacturing, trade, as well as agriculture, so germane for us to actually look into this time around?
Well, thank you very much. I suppose those who express concern about whether this is just business as usual may be excused if they do so, because, you know, as a country, we haven't had a very glorious history in the past of, you know, budget execution. But I'd like to begin by, you know, saying that people should have confidence in that, you know, there's a determined, you know, decision by this administration to, you know, bring greater diligence to our, you know, budget execution. And if I may begin, I mean, you know, the 2016 budget, for instance, a lot of people, you know, ask questions about how well that budget has been executed. Unfortunately, the 2016 budget took quite a while in getting, enacted, and so wasn't really signed into law until May 6th. But what are the facts today in terms of, execution of, that budget? When you look at, in effect, therefore, I mean, we've had 7 months since that, budget has passed. As of the end of the third quarter, 30th, December, we have already implemented 79% on a pro rata basis of, that budget. I mean, it was a total expenditure of 6.06 trillion naira. We had, 3.58 trillion naira as of that date. On a pro rata basis, that's 79%. That's a significantly higher rate of budget performance than we've had for full years in most of the last decade. It is our expectation, and I believe that you heard the Senate President during the budget presentation ceremony when he committed that the National Assembly was going to work to ensure speedy enactment of this 2017 budget. We believe that that will indeed happen, and we will have a lot more time to implement that budget. And we will see even much higher percentage performance of the budget. If you unpack it and look at capital expenditure, for instance, the records show that as of the end of the third quarter, we had released 753.6 billion naira for capital expenditure. As of the end of November, that figure has gone up by another 66 billion naira. So we're at over 800 billion in capital expenditure. That is the highest of capital releases that has happened in our recent history. In fact, I can only remember 1 year in the recent history where the budget capital expenditure was up to that amount, and that was even in a year where the capital budget was rolled over to the following year, at least another quarter before we achieved that level of expenditure. If you look at the level of capital expenditure in the 2016 budget already, it exceeds even the aggregate capital budget for, say, 2015. So I just like to say, yes, the history hasn't been it, but let's be a bit more positive about the future.
All right, Mr. Kabweze, thank you very much. Now, let's indicate clearly that this is the fourth in a series of our discussions on the economic outlook for 2017. And it's useful that, of course, that we take a step back to have a review of what has been happening in 2016, part of what Mr. Ben Akabweze, DG Budget Office, has just discussed. But let's go back to our Lagos Network Center. Mr. Muda Yusuf, our focus today in terms of outlook essentially will be on trade and manufacturing. And of course, your Chamber of Commerce and Industry is also involved in this. From your perspective, what was the promise of 2016 in terms of the appropriation, in terms of governmental policies, and where are we on the road to attaining that promise, and therefore what might likely happen in 2017? But let's begin with what the hope was for 2016 and where we are in attaining that hope.
Well, thank you very much. The hope for 2016 is largely about self-reliance, promoting self-reliance, increasing capacity utilization, creating more jobs, and more importantly, promoting the concept of import substitution because of the challenges we have been facing with exchange rates, interest rates, and the rest of it. We have not fared so well. Talking about economic policies, when we talk about the budget, There is the appropriation element of it, which the Director of Budget has properly articulated. That's about the structure of spending, and I know that the structure of spending was such that a lot of emphasis was placed on infrastructure in the outgoing year. But the budget can only go as far as the resources permit. So clearly, the impact was not so significant because the resources were not there in the first place. And unfortunately, the private sector that should have actually filled a lot of the gaps, they also face challenges, especially arising from policy. My view is that in order to turn the manufacturer, even the entire economy around, we have to expand the scope for private sector participation. And that can only happen if we put policies in place that inspires private sector confidence, investors' confidence. And when I talk about private sector, I'm referring here to domestic investors, domestic private sector investors, foreign direct investors, and portfolio investors. All these three components of investors are very key to turning the economy around. During the year, manufacturers faced serious challenges with energy prices. The cost of energy was so high, and that escalated the cost of production. It pushed up prices, and it affected profit margins. It also affected adversely capacity utilization. Gas prices were very high, and for most part of the year, gas was not even available. And don't forget, even gas is priced in dollars. So all these things is a major challenge. The cost of diesel was so high, over 200 naira per liter. Some manufacturers had to resort to the importation of LPFO because our refineries have not been working. So all this was a major issue. We had also very serious issues with the foreign exchange policy. There was so much uncertainty. People could not plan. They are not sure when to get foreign exchange, at what rate, and in what quantity or amount that they could get. So there was a serious issue of liquidity in the foreign exchange market. So that also made it very difficult for manufacturers to also push forward during the year. Of course, we had the issue of the high cost of fund, interest rates. I mean, throughout the year, the monetary policy was such that in response to the inflationary situation, there was a tightening of monetary policy. So that also escalated costs. Cost of financing in manufacturing and other major investments also went up significantly. And because of the general challenges in the economy, purchasing power also declined. So there were all sorts of issues for manufacturing. But the good thing is that there were new opportunities, particularly opportunities to substitute imports, because it has become increasingly difficult for people to consume what is imported. So that created some opportunities. But again, in order to take advantage of the opportunities, the environment itself needs to be right for the manufacturers to be able to expand their scope and take advantage. So all these issues that I've mentioned has also made it difficult for the manufacturer to take advantage of the opportunities that the current economic situation offers by way of substituting imports.
All right, Mr. Muda Yusuf, thank you very much. Ibadan Network Center, we earlier introduced Professor Olua Jakaye. Professor Jakaye, joining us from Ibadan Network Center. Of course, we had you in the course of the year discussing various aspects of the economy, whether we're talking about growth rates, interest rates, foreign exchange rates, and the whole gamut. Now, you just listened to Mr. Muda Yusuf talk about some of the challenges that the manufacturing sector has had to contend with. Plus, the apparent paradox of good opportunity for import substitution, but of course, the manufacturing sector hobbled, as it were, by the raft of issues that he has indicated. From your perspective, what has been 2016 in terms of outlook, particularly for manufacturing and trade?
Thank you very much. Again, good morning, Nigeria. It's great to be here. I fully agree with the views of Mr. Muda, as well as the Director General Budget, in terms of review of what happened in 2016. But I think a major challenge having regard to the fact that our economy is heavily import dependent, is the dwindling foreign exchange earning, during 2016, which was a combination of low prices in the first quarter of the year of crude oil, our own Brent crude, and when prices started turning up around June, July, unfortunately, we have the challenges of pipeline vandalism and militancy in the oil-producing area. That meant a double shock in terms of price and shock in terms of quantity. There is certainly not much that government could have done, with that kind of dwindling foreign exchange, earning. If you remember, the budget was itself predicated on $38 per barrel, which was quite good, and it was also predicated on 2.2 million barrels per day. Unfortunately, the scenario during 2016 was such that we didn't actually make that 2.2 million barrels per day consistently beginning from July this year. So my take is that all the challenges that Mr. Muda mentioned and the review by the DG budget, they are predicated on the disappointments in terms of foreign exchange earnings. Now, the other leg of it was various policies were put in place to attract foreign investors, particularly portfolio investors. Some of us have the view that these portfolio investors are not going to come if they don't see that you have a very healthy foreign reserve. Because when they come in, they want to be assured that when they want to go out, one, they can go out, and two, they can go out with their money. If you find that your foreign, your external reserve is dwindling, whatever you do, these fellows will not come. And we also highlighted the fact that as soon as the Fed in the United States and the ECB in the EU and the Bank of England, for example, Bank of Japan, as soon as they start, reversing this, persistent quantitative easing and started stoking interest rates, as has happened now in the Federal Reserve in a few days back. Whatever you do in developing countries, particularly our type of developing economy, these resources will flow back to where they came from. And therefore, we should not predicate our own prospects on portfolio investors primarily. We should focus more on what Mr. Muda and the DG budget said, and also what was said in the budget, namely put policies in place to encourage systematic deletion from imports in terms of production, inputs, and also begin to encourage patronage of locally produced goods and services to do what we call import replacement. I know it's conventional to talk about import substitution, but actually I think the issue is import replacement in all spheres of our lives. One, government should also itself begin to look inward. The private sector should be looking inward, and the consumers should also be, proud that they want to use and consume locally made goods, because that's the way to generate jobs, and make our growth very inclusive.
Thank you very much, Professor Oluwajakaye. We'll be back to you in the course of the discussion. Let's go over now to Kano, where we have Malam Karim Keita join us via Skype. Now, let's take a look at your own sector, of course. Yeah, let me take a quick look at what the president said about this sector. He said that the true drivers of economic will be, for the future will be the farmers, small and medium-sized manufacturers, agro-allied businesses, dressmakers, entertainers, and technology startups. These are some of the areas that have been looked into for critical move for imminent economic recovery. Now, as part of the sector, really, let's look at those needs that will actually undermine or underpin, rather, this area of growth that we're looking at. What are those needs that you think we should look into as a matter of urgency?
Thank you very much. Like we all have been anticipating, the doomsday of dependence on petroleum as the major source of income in Nigeria has come. And really that is a wake-up call for us now. And For us in the manufacturing sector, we think the best way to get out of this is more emphasis on agro-processing. Agro-processing is the first and foremost step the country should consider, and because that is what takes care of the small farmers, reduce their post-harvest loss, and give them value addition to their crops. So for us, we have been doing a lot in that segment in spite of all the serious challenges we've been facing. We have been working with outgrowers in our respective investment portfolios. If you look at the agricultural commitment of the Dangote Group, in terms of the sugarcane sector, where we have plantations, we have the rice now in Jigawa State, also under outgrowers. We have tomato in Kano. We have pineapple and oil palm in Calabar. So all these are areas that impact on the small-scale farmer. And this is the most important area we should focus on, because unless you give the small-scale farmer the opportunity to realize better income from the little he grows, he will perpetually remain in this vicious cycle of poverty. So for us, what we want to urge the government is to increase more intervention in this area. We could all see the small intervention now in the rice sector, how it has started transforming the agricultural scope. Kebbi State, Ebonyi State now producing massive quantities of rice. So as a country, we should make sure that we replace any food item that we import, because it's known worldwide. Any country that cannot feed itself is a failed nation. And we have no business importing any food item in Nigeria, because we have all the elements in our favor. We have the land, we have the good climatic conditions, and we have the enormous population, both in terms of production and in terms of consumption. So the emphasis should be for government now to create more enabling environment so that other private investors can key in and move in. And this environment basically has to do with power. The cost of power in running factories is enormous. And once that could be arrested, then Nigeria can produce competitively. We can even produce to export. All other elements are easy to fix. Fortunately, the current government has been able to reduce to an extent the insecurity we are having. So that will give more comfort to the foreign investors. And I think 2017 is going to be a very prosperous year, because we have now gone through the learning curve. We have suffered a bit, and from the current budget we've seen more in capital investment. It shows more money will be released into the productive sector. So a lot of people will be definitely be engaged. There could be more circulation of wealth, and we hope by the end of 2017 we should get out of the recession.
All right, Malam Abdul Karim Keita, just we'll still stay with you. I'd like you to indicate for the benefit of our viewers. Now, if you take a look at the numbers that we have had this year, of course, the country is still in recession. Inflation is at officially now 18.48%. But the agricultural subsector, as well as solid minerals, were always singled out for recording positive growth. Now, you are in the agricultural sector, has been part of Dangote Group Farms. What were those enablers in agriculture that conduced to the positive figures that we have seen coming out from that subsector in spite of the overall recession that is the hallmark of the economy in 2016?
Please come again. The last bit I didn't get you.
The last part of my question is this: what were those factors that contributed to the growth of the agricultural sector in 2016 so that it was in positive territory rather than in overall negative territory of the economy?
Okay, you see, the most important factor has been the current central bank intervention on the Anchor program, which brings together the agro-processor and the small-scale farmers, so that there is that synergy, a guaranteed uptake and a guaranteed minimum price for whatever the farmer produces. And that is the impetus required to really ginger up the agro-processing industry. Also, the farmers have more comfort now that whatever they grow, there's a ready market for it. They will not suffer any loss, and they are also sure of their good competitive price they will get even before they go to the farm, before they plant. So this is the type of situation we want to have across the whole value chain of various products we are into. You can see rice now. We have no business importing rice. Tomato, which is just a common vegetable that you grow in 3 months, we are importing it massively. We don't have need for that. Even the vegetable oil, we have several oil palm plantations across the country that really, with a small assistance from the government, we should stop importation of vegetable oil. So the Anchor program scheme by Central Bank is very commendable, and I think it should be escalated, because that's what will spring up both the small, medium, and large-scale agro-processing industries. And also, there's this plan by the federal government, which has been in the cooler for quite some time. That is the creation of the staple crop processing zones. They have earmarked zones in the 6 geographical regions of this country, where they intend to put all the necessary infrastructure of roads, light, security, so that investors can come and site manufacturing industries in those zones, so that they can uptake the major crops that are being processed in that area. But apparently, up till now, none of this have taken up. I think that's another area the government should really give more impetus and focus on.
Okay, Madam Keita, thanks a lot. We'll come back to you. But just before we return to our Abuja studios to get the DG Budget Office to respond to some of the issues and others, let me ask Mr. Muda Yusuf at our Lagos Network Center. You just listen to Madam Keita talk about the benefits of what is happening in terms of the agricultural value chain. Now, one of the commonest complaints we often heard from manufacturers and those who made frequent applications for Forex was that they needed to buy raw materials. Now, how much has the increase in agricultural production been of benefit to the manufacturing subsector in terms of being able to access raw materials locally in 2016?
Well, I believe that the impact has been positive, but it is particularly in the food and beverage sector. Don't forget that when you talk about manufacturing sector, you have so many subsectors in manufacturing. The food and beverage sector, of course, has benefited from the growth and all the positive impact that has been recorded or experienced in the agricultural sector. But there are some other sectors in manufacturing that did not have this opportunity, and that will require some time for some of these inputs to be sourced locally. If you take the pharmaceutical sectors, for instance, you take the iron and steel sector, you take the plastic industry sector, some of their key raw materials are not yet easily available. So for those sectors, I think they still have quite a number of challenges. But for the food and beverage sector, yes, of course, there has been some positive impact. And that is why in all of this, we need to identify the competitiveness and the comparative advantage that we have as a country. You cannot have comparative or competitive advantage in everything. So we need to identify those sectors in which we have the strength and those sectors in which we don't have the strength, so that we don't apply a sweeping trade policy to all the sectors. Because some of the challenges that we face today, particular challenges that has led to the escalating costs and high prices of goods and services, the inflation that we have had, and by extension, the kind of poverty situation that we have had, is the high cost of goods and services. I admit that the currency situation is a key factor, but the trade policy is also a major contributory factor. So if we are applying a trade policy, we need to identify sectors in which we can actually push forward so easily, so that the impact on the citizens will not be too severe. If you do apply very restrictive trade policies in the area of agriculture, in cement, that is understandable. But if you extend it to other sectors, you'll be creating a lot of challenges both for the investors and for the consumers. And don't forget, at the end of the day, it is the welfare of the people that matters. And we need to balance the welfare of the people with also the welfare of business. You could have situations where investors will be making money, but the citizens may be suffering. So there has to be a good balance and a very clear discernment of what sectors in which we have strength, in which you can apply more restrictive policies, and sectors in which we don't have so much strength, in which we have to reduce the restrictiveness of our trade policy. So that is my perspective on that.
All right, thank you very much, Sir Muda Lawal there. Back to us in the Abuja studio. Yes, Mr. Akabweze, you had the opportunity listening to all the different guests from the different centers, rather, and there were areas that actually touched, because so I saw you taking so much notes. Now, let's take a look at some of those areas that are actually critical. So earlier on, Mr. Muda also mentioned about issue of public-private partnership area. You also make mention of what strength we have, or where we have comparative advantages, and where we need to actually focus. So it won't just be a sweeping program or policy to actually address this area of economic recovery. Where is the budget going to be leading us in this direction, or how should we actually address that?
Well, I believe you must have, listened to Mr. President's speech during the budget presentation. One, Mr. President early made the point that as we go into 2017, there will be a more deliberate effort to ensure harmonization of, monetary, fiscal, and trade, policies to ensure that we're all shooting towards the same, goals. If you also, in the same speech, President made the point that a cardinal objective of the 2017 budget will be, to promote public-private, partnerships in basically delivering infrastructure and other public goods and services. When you look at the 2017 budget in tangible terms, okay, when we talk about the promotion of public-private, partnership, there are very specific and significant initiatives included there. We have, for instance, the provision of 100 billion naira in there for a social housing fund, and that 100 billion is government's own seed into a 1 trillion naira fund for provision of housing that will create mortgage scheme that will open up the opportunity for home ownership to a lot more Nigerians. 900 billion of that, therefore, is expected to come from the private sector. In the 2017 budget, if you look at the details of the health budget, for instance, that was mentioned in the presentation of the Honorable Minister for Budget and National Planning yesterday, there's and 11.1 billion naira, approximately 12 billion naira provision in there, for which is, government seed into a fund and a scheme to be managed by the National Sovereign Investment Authority to try and reverse the outbound, medical tourism. So to attract private capital into establishing first-class, world-class, tertiary health institutions in Nigeria, such that, especially cancer and cardiac-related cases, which are two of the most common reasons why Nigerians seek medical care abroad. We can actually then have those such facilities here. Government is not looking to fund all of this, but to put some fund into it. If you look at the details also of the 2017 budget for the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, it includes a 50 billion naira vision there towards the establishment of what it's called special economic zones that will provide the platform for, our quest for an export-led, growth in terms of our economy. As you have heard also, in 2016, we didn't just have a revenue challenge. More importantly, we have, a foreign exchange challenge, because the disruptions, in the oil gas sector, which, and of course, as Mr. You pointed out, I think it was Professor Kaye, in the early part of the year where we had low prices and then subsequently we had disruptions. The net effect is we have received, significantly less foreign exchange inflows than we would have. And that has not just had impact on revenues, but on foreign exchange. And because of the current structure of our economy, it has therefore affected growth in other sectors, principally, manufacturing. So we must then also focus on export to create other, sources of foreign exchange flow into the country. So, I can go on and cite specific examples that show that the expenditure provisions in the 2017 budget are actually supportive of those objectives.
Well, just still with you, Mr. Bernard Kabweze. Moda Yusuf at the Lagos Network Center drew attention again to the binary relationship between appropriation and economic policy in driving manufacturing, and in fact in propelling the entire economy. Specific to manufacturing, what is the counterbalancing economic policy, or what are the counterbalancing economic policies that will, aid the manufacturing sector against the background of the hopes that we had for 2016, of course, self-reliance, capacity utilization, import substitution, and so on and so forth, so that the challenges that they have faced this year could, of course, either be eliminated or significantly attenuated in 2017?
Well, one of the critical challenges that Mr. Yusuf pointed out was the challenge of high energy costs. Okay, the number of factors that accounted for that, one of which was in the early part of the year you had product shortages. I think that we have dealt with, okay? I believe also that in terms of the adjustment in cost of, refined petroleum products, that's pretty much been fed through the system. Of course, the ultimate solution to that is that we must stop importing refined petroleum products. Government has set a 2019 target date to achieve that. Currently, we spend 30% of our foreign exchange to pay for imported petroleum products. And, we are a major crude, producing nation. If we eliminated importation of petroleum products, we will have 30% more of our foreign exchange earnings today that will be available to other, needy areas, apart from, of course, the job creation opportunities and the local value that refining of local of products locally will create. Of course, in 2017, we can only make progress, in that, direction. The other source, it talked about gas. A lot of the manufacturing companies now, depend on, they use gas-powered generators and in their production. He mentioned the fact that, yes, indeed, the disruptions to oil production in the Niger Delta, unfortunately, also affected gas. Not only did it affect the supply of gas to those, industries that actually use gas at their operations, but it also affected the supply of gas to power generating, companies. And that took out, more than half of the existing generating capacity because of that. And with limited power supply, the manufacturers had to depend more on self-generation at higher cost. So with the very deliberate effort by the government to resolve the challenges in the Niger Delta, which came through clearly in Mr. President's speech also, we believe that we can see gas production, in 2017 return to normalcy, and we can also hopefully see some of the additional investments in gas production begin to come through, and that can only be beneficial for the manufacturing sector.
All right. Thank you very much there, Mr. Ben Akaboise. Now, just to indicate that we have reactions already coming in from our viewers who have taken advantage of our Twitter handle. It's normally there on the left side of your screen at NTA GMM. But before we take those tweets, let's return to our Ibadan studios, where Professor Ajakaye, of course, has been listening to the comments by the other guys. Professor Ajakaye, now looking into 2017, on the basis of what they've said, on the basis of what Mr. President has tabled before the National Assembly, specific now to trade and manufacturing, of course, if you don't manufacture, if you don't produce, you can't possibly be involved in trade. Otherwise, we'll still be an import-dependent economy. What, in your opinion, are the priority areas or the priority issues to take along in terms of, as it were, guiding the National Assembly, which has to pass ultimately the appropriation bill before it?
Thank you very much. I've listened attentively to the very excellent contributions by colleagues. And in terms of what the National Assembly should be looking at in passing the budget, they should check for internal consistency. We have the broad picture, but the details should be carefully scrutinized to ensure that there are no, gaps in the process. An example, for example, is the plan to actually reduce, or in fact, make us self-sufficient in production and consumption of certain basic staple crops and commodities in the country. They should check in the package for the relevant MDAs, and also layers with the private sector to actually elicit their own perspective on the feasibility and practicability of the policies and programs put in place, and actually get from them commitment as to exactly what they also will do to reinforce what government said. My own view over time has been that we have got a private sector that is always eager to ask for concessions, but we have not had commitment on their part that if you give me this concession, this is what I will do with it. A very good example now is the cement industry. We have successfully managed ourselves out of importation of cement because the concession was given. You can quarrel with the mechanism, and you can quarrel with who actually gets it, but at least it was delivered, and the private sector agent responded, and today we are now actually ready to be exporting, cement. That kind of, public-private consultation, not just partnership, public-private partnership in the context of consultation and deliberation should be part of this package. And I also believe that in the context of implementing the 2017 budget, it should be useful to get the government to provide framework and platforms for regular, meetings to review performance by all stakeholders. And by that I mean the MDAs at the federal and state levels, and also the relevant private sector and the labor union, as well as the civil society organization, because this country belongs to all of us. We have to work in concert to make sure that we develop our country. And you cannot do that by relying on government. Let me make this other point. And this is in context of agriculture. We are very happy and personally, pleased with the thrust of the federal government, budget, focusing on scaling up agricultural, production and encouraging linkage with the manufacturing sector through agro-processing, in essence, escalating the good initiative of the Dangote, industries. Fine. But you see, agriculture is a responsibility of all levels of government. It will be important to use the instrument of National Economic Council to get the state governments to also do a complementary investment program in transport, for example. Because if you have very nice highway by the federal government and you have very crummy, state road and very dilapidated local government road, the farmer will still be isolated. And only when you have a cluster, production process like outgrower schemes, that you may then be able to insulate yourself from that. But how many farmers are actually exposed to outgrower schemes? So we should have complementarity in public sector investment between federal, state, and local government, so that the farmer can therefore be able to move his product right from the farm onto the collection or aggregation center, and then before it's passed on to the processor to then produce the goods and services that we are looking forward to in this country. So I think that is also important, and I'm happy that the Vice President has been very diligent in collaboration with the governors to meet regularly. One of the issues they should be discussing very soon is exactly how the state governments are actually gearing up to complement federal government investment in transport infrastructure, and therefore, make life more, abundant for the, toiling, small-scale farmers all over the country. I think if we do that, we should be actually doing that. Secondly, I didn't see it, but I'm sure it may be there, particularly with 92 billion allocated to agriculture. The investment in research and development, particularly the research institutions in agriculture, we should not leave them behind. If we leave them behind, we then find difficulty actually scaling up the yield, and therefore guaranteeing regular supply of this agricultural produce to the processors, who we have to be operating 24/7. And if we therefore have a system whereby the yield is low, or not reliable, and the quality of the agricultural produce is not very wholesome, by the time you get to the factory gate, you then find that the farmer, the processor will be at a disadvantage, and the tendency is for them to start looking for, in the beginning, blending local production with imports, and eventually, in fact, disengage from local production, during the off-season, period. When we are not harvesting. So I think that is very key. Thirdly, again, in agriculture, we have primarily rain-fed agriculture in Nigeria, and we have several irrigation schemes under the water resources ministry. I will also look for the National Assembly to ensure that there is synergy between the Ministry of Agriculture, Water Resources and Environment, to ensure that we progressively delete or disengage our farmers from single cropping that are actually around rain-fed into irrigation schemes that will therefore make sure that they can produce more than one crop in a year, and therefore guarantee supply to the processors, which, as Mr. Yusuf has said, is our current strong point. The other universal intermediates, particularly, in the area of chemicals, in the area of pharmaceuticals, in the area of paper and pulp. I think government needs to also look at that, but I think that will go into the plan that is being, articulated, because these are not matters of, short-term issues, and you cannot address every issue in a single budget. My hope is that the upcoming development plan, we have programs that will revive the moribund paper industry, the moribund steel industry, the moribund, rubber industry, because those are what we call universal intermediates for all producers, along with energy and transportation, which government is actually focusing on very appropriately.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Oluwajakaye. You've touched on so many areas. Well, when we return from this break, we'll take a look at what other sectors, from manufacturing to all that aspects of trade, could do, just as it's doing very well in the agricultural sector. We'll go on a break now. It's Good Morning, Nigeria.
call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Germs, oil, and dirt cause blemishes and uneven skin tone. You need Dettol Even Tone. It removes 99.9% of germs and is formulated to remove excess oil and dirt, helping to reduce blemishes.
Does your antiseptic liquid kill the germs that cause flu, diarrhea, typhoid? Dettol does. Dettol provides 10 times more protection versus leading competition. So why take a risk with your loved ones?
Chairman of all chairmen. Oh, let me wash your hand for you. Don't worry. Let me take toothpick and... Hey. According to Professor, tranquilizer.
I am disappointed, aghast, crestfallen, and vanquished at your shameful display.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Yomi Fash Lanso, Ogus Baba.
I'd like to see Mr. Udo Eto.
I hear you now, but find me something.
Are you mad?
Go.
Goodness, August, you show your shit.
Oh.
Very nice man, generous.
Okay, anything for the guests. Maybe feature something.
Happy weekend, sir.
Thank you.
Today is Wednesday.
Professor John Bull, this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times.
I'm finished.
Who finished you? Over and out.
Welcome to the new speed of life.
All right, welcome back. Here to say good morning, Nigeria. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now we have viewer reactions now to the subject matter for discussion today. Festus Akimboyewa has this tweet. Federal government must be bold to impose high tariffs on imports in order to encourage local manufacturing and consumption of what we produce. And from Wilson Godwin said there is no button anywhere to press to come out from where we are now than consuming what we produce. And still from Festus Akimboyewa, our manufacturing sector has been under pressure and declining for decades. Revitalizing the sector by the federal government will create thousands of jobs. Sani Michael Omokaji, DG Budget, what is the roadmap for manufacturing sector towards enhancing trade activities in 2017 budget? And Achipong Friday. Please remember Jalkuta Steel, our alien refineries and textile industries in 2017 budget. Resuscitated them will take Nigeria to her pride of place. So those are some of the tweets that we have in the meantime. Just to continue with the conversation, we return to Abdul Karim Keita, who's joined us, of course, he's been with us via Skype from Kano. Malam Keita, again, you listen to what the other guests have said in terms of the outlook for 2017, particularly with regard to the harmonization of policies or programs for irrigation, for all the things that you need to do between the Ministry of Agric and Environment on the one hand, the Ministry of Agric and Water Resources. From a policy perspective, what would you like to see? You already touched on the staple crops processing zones. What would you like to see ramped up very quickly in that area? We also, the special economic zones. Is this an area of concern to you who are in the food sector? Well, it does appear that we're having some audio challenge there with Malam Keita. Malam Keita, if you can hear me, I'm saying, my question, just to repeat myself, I'm saying you listen to the other guests. What would you like to see in 2017, and once the bill is eventually passed into law, in terms of harmonization involving agric, environment, and water resources on the one hand, as well as the staple crops processing zone and the special economic zones? For issue. Well, back to our Lagos Network Center. Muda Yusuf, DG of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I would like you to respond to one of the points made by Professor Lua Jaka. Yeah, Professor Lua Jaka, and this is an issue that, of course, has come up from time to time, that we have seen the benefit in cement production, that the private sector or those who are in business are always asking for concessions, but they seem reluctant to make commitments. When can we begin to get commitments, or what is required to be able to extract the requisite commitment from the business while there's a counterpart concession by government?
Well, I don't quite understand the context, the context in which the Prof used the word concession. What we worry about in the private sector is an enabling environment. If you have a low interest rate regime, I don't believe that is correct. For any economy to grow, you need investors to invest. And for investors to invest, they need the right kind of monetary environment. Now, if you are having a situation where you have to go into manufacturing and you pay an interest rate of 25%, you have a situation where treasury bills is attracting interest, government is paying interest about 20% on treasury bills. Federal government bonds is attracting interest of about 18%, 17%. How will funds come into the real sector? Because these are risk-free investments. And when we talk about the key inputs that we use in manufacturing, whatever we don't have within the economy, I think it is only fair that we allow a more liberal imports to be able to, for the input, because you could have a manufacturing outfit, you could have a 70% local content and 30% imports. You could be 80% local content, 20% imports. In as far as you need some import content to complement what you have locally, I think we should make that available. If you make it available on a consistent basis, I'm sure in that process, jobs will be created. Because ultimately, what we are all seeking to see is that we have a creation of jobs. And when the private sector is more prosperous, tax revenue will be generated. So that is the way I see it. And to come back to the issue of policy, it is important that we get the policy environment right. It's not so much about concession. It's about the appropriateness of the policy environment. And let me give you an example. We have the auto policy. The whole idea of the auto policy is to ensure that we make vehicles locally. Now, Kia Picanto, which is perhaps the smallest car that you have in this country today, is going for 5 million naira. Kia Picanto. It's about 1.2 or 1 liter engine capacity. Toyota Corolla is going for between 15 million to 17 million naira. A Toyota Coaster, which is a bus that companies use, is going for 37 million naira. Then we have the issue of the trucks that manufacturers use, even cement companies, because the rail system is not functioning. They use a lot of trucks. The duty is about 30 or 35%. So we need to see what we can do to reduce this cost. Because the biggest challenge today that we need to address is the issue of cost. Because it is affecting the welfare of the people. And one way to do that is to look at the import duty component. The currency, there is very little we can do. But if you have an appropriate foreign policy regime, you could have a better inflow of foreign exchange from autonomous sources. Because the current fairly rigid or administrative regime in foreign exchange policy is not likely to attract inflows from autonomous sources. And across the level of imports, we also need to look at those things that are critical for production in the economy. I mean, the trucks, for instance, virtually every manufacturing company needs the trucks. And it's amazing how much duty that industrialists are paying for the importation of trucks. These are things that are within our own control policy-wise. So we should not drive the cost on too much on revenue. We should also look at the impact of the revenue they generate, the impact on the larger economy. So I will submit that we need to look more in the policy space, and we need to also be very discerning and be very careful. It is good to look inwards. I mean, it is very good, at least it is great multiplier effects and so on, but we need to do it gradually. Because you cannot transit from being import dependent to being inward looking overnight. It has to be a gradual process. That was the model that was used in cement. Over a couple of years, there was both importation and local production with appropriate incentives. So we should try to replicate that model in trying to transit from being import dependent to being self-reliant. Because that is very key for purpose to ensure that we don't have too much shock on both businesses and on the citizens. It is very critical.
Okay, thank you very much, Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Muda Yusuf. It was a pleasure having you join us on the program, taking a look at the sector critical to 2017 economic recovery path. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
We turn to Kanu to have the final comments from the Managing Director, Dangote Group Farms, Abdulkarim Keita. Yes, hope you can hear us now. Just your final comments. Moving forward, what must we do differently?
Yes, thank you very much for that. For us to move forward, really the government has to put in place tariffs that will restrict importation of all imported goods, most especially food items that we have the capacity to grow locally. And that is the only impetus that will encourage us who are already in the business to expand and also to serve an incentive to those newcomers. Because really, it seems Nigeria were not ready to suffer a bit for a better tomorrow. All those people calling of tarring a bit that we should not put a ban or tariff, I think we are not trying to help ourselves, because this is the only thing to do that will spur all investors, both foreign and local, and also encourage the local farmers to go into more production. Once these imports are continuously coming in, there's no way Nigeria will be self-sufficient in these food items. And we need to have that nerve, that courage to really do this. Unless the government does this, I'm happy the DG budget is there on this program. And he knew we have met with him, with the Minister of National Planning, and we have been advocating of all these policies that will ginger up agro-processing and self-sufficiency in local food production.
All right. Malam Abdul Karim Keita, I would like to thank you for being with us. You joined us via Skype from Kano, even though the connection was poor on occasion. Thank you very much for your contribution to our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, just to indicate again that we have another set of tweets. We'll take those tweets and then go over to Ibadan to get the closing thoughts from Professor Olua Jakaye. King Bella Kosh, that's the handle for this viewer. It says, my question is, large money has been released, yet local contractors are being owed, and they are employers of labor to a large extent.
And from at Malam, that's the person that I wrote here. What are the measures taken to grow trade locally? Because the economy grows faster when the local trades are deemed salient.
And then we have this from Umar Magaji. I believe the health sector needs more than it was allocated, and this aspect really needs more attention. From
Agbe Oladega, it says, stop fuel importation. Sounds good. But where is the collective will and determination? Until our technical base is revived, no way.
And we have this from Umar Bala. It says, what can the director, that's the DG of Budget Office, say about the persistent salary shortfalls in the 2016 budget?
And from Sani Michael Omakoji, first thing first, let us identify the people driving this sector by having a correct database in place, thereafter plan for them.
All right, so those are the tweets that we are taking in the meantime. I think we want to go over now to Ibadan Network Center. Professor Olua Jakaye, let's get your closing thoughts. It's been a tight program, but 2017, in addition to what other points you have articulated, what else would you like to see done?
Thank you very much. What I would like to see done is to sustain the implementation process that the DG budget had very well articulated in respect of 2016 budget. Let us carry that over into 2017. Two, like I said earlier, this country is a federation with states and local governments in control of around half of the federation account process. When you add their own IGR to it, it can be quite significant. To be putting all the burden on federal government and more or less excuse the states and local governments from the process, I think it is going to be suboptimal. So in addition to federal government pushing on effective implementation of 2017 budget, they should also get the state government to do complementary, policies and programs, and also jointly monitor implementation.
All right, thank you very much. Professor Olu Ajakaye, former president, Nigerian Economic Summit. You joined us from our Ibadan Network Center. We appreciate your contribution to the program. Okay, now let's have the final word from DG Budget, Director General, Budget Office, Mr. Ben Akabuezi. You've listened to other comments in different areas has been raised.
Thank you, and as you observed, I've made copious notes, and but let me just speak to some of the issues that have come up. There's been a lot of discussion around tariffs. Let me say clearly that the subject of tariffs is not an easy one. The normally contending objectives. You have, as you have heard even during discussions today, some people want higher tariffs, some want lower tariffs. It's a delicate balancing act, but ultimately we expect to see a tariff regime that supports our objectives of actually truly diversifying this economy. For at least the past 40 years, since I have about economic issues in this country, every administration has set diversification as an objective. But it hasn't happened. But this administration is determined to actually, diversify, the economy. And tariffs play an important role in achieving that objective. There was a comment about Ajaokuta Steel, as you've heard. The way forward Ajaokuta Steel is to bring private capital in it. But in the budget for this year, we have about 2.58 billion naira provision in there for some expenditure that government needs to incur in that process. And we hope that we can get the local steel industry back up. As you know, the Ministry of Salimina is actually now called Ministry of Mines and Steel Development. A lot of people still refer to it as solid minerals. But so steel development is a critical goal that they are pursuing. The question about local contractors' debts that are being owed, apart from the expenditures included in this budget, and you would have heard that come through during Mr. President's budget speech. This government is determined during 2017 to try and find a solution, a lasting solution to the issue of contractors and other third-party obligations of government, some going back to 10 years. And you heard about a program for dealing with this, which which we estimate at about 2 trillion naira. We're going through the process of collation and verification of this and developing a program to deal with this. It may not all be paying in cash, but it will be a program that provides liquidity for those people who are owed. There's something about...
I was just wondering,
yes.
DG Boyle, because again we are pressed for time. One critical area that we've touched on in this series of discussion on economic outlook for 2017 has to do with the harmonization of 3 critical policies: trade, fiscal, and monetary. What is the economic team doing in this regard? Because part of the issues you were referring to as fiscal measures now, tariff, that's a fiscal measure, right? The monetary guys were here, CBN, we had them here yesterday on the program. What should, the players or actors in the economy look forward to in terms of the interplay of these policies?
Well, first of all, everyone has the same objective. But in every economy, there is a healthy conflict between monetary and fiscal policies. For instance, as Mr. Yusuf said, we want to see a low interest rate regime. But the Monetary Policy Authority also has a goal to ensure stability, to ensure that we have an interest rate regime that promotes mobilization of deposits, promotes investment. And that can only happen when you have a positive real interest rate system. Their key goal, of course, is price stability. So when you have a situation where inflation is at 18.48%, the monetary policy authorities are challenged in trying to then have an interest rate regime that is lower than the inflation rate. So, on the other hand, fiscal wants to see lower interest rates to drive growth. So it's about us, dialoguing and finding, some balance, in this.
Mr. Ben Akabweze, Director General Budget Office of the Federation, would like to thank you for joining our conversation this morning. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you on set. Thank you.
My pleasure too.
Oh. All right. We'd also like to thank Professor Olu Ajakaye. I thought I did that. Former President, Nigeria Economic Summit Society. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure as well having you on the program this morning.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay. All right. To our other complementary segments, Kingsley.
That's right. We'll just go ahead now to our foreign desk to take stories from the international scene.
The United Nations Security Council on Monday voted quickly to deploy UN observers to Aleppo to monitor evacuations and report on the fate of civilians who remain in the besieged Syrian city. The Council unanimously adopted the French-drafted resolution that marks the first show of unity in many months among world leaders grappling with the crisis in Syria. And to the U.S., President Barack Obama faulted his party's campaign strategy, arguing that Democrats suffered stringent electoral losses in last month's vote because they failed to campaign in hard-hit rural areas.
A situation where there are not only entire states, but also big chunks of states where if we're not showing up, if we're not in there making an argument, then we're going to lose. and we can lose badly, and that's what happened in this election.
Lastly, Russia's ambassador to Ankara has been killed in a gun attack in the Turkish capital, Ankara. The assailant was later killed by the police. Andrei Karlov, 62, was presenting a speech at an embassy-sponsored photo exhibition when a man in a suit shot the diplomat in the back from close range multiple times. Patricia A. Samiluba on the foreign scene.
Well, that's the program. But before we go, let's take a quick check of the Meteorological Agency for the weather outlook for the rest of the day.
Nigerian Meteorological Agency, I'm Suleiman Gurin. The satellite picture shows dose has been raised from the source region and is expected to transport into and across the country with strong, dry, northeasterly trade winds with reduced horizontal visibility of 2 to 5 kilometers from northern down to the central states. Cloudy conditions over the inland down to the coastal cities. Later in the afternoon, with little installation, we anticipate localized thunderstorms over the southeast coast and partly cloudy condition over the remaining regions of the south. And the conditions over the northern down to the central states will be in those haze. And for temperature forecast, please do stand by.
For another insightful edition of the program, please join us tomorrow morning again. Thank you for watching. My name is Blessing Abu. Bye for now.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Blessing in thanking you for being with us today as well. Enjoy the rest of your day.